present and say welcome. Welcome, Simone.
Thank you.
We're restarting again because all of a sudden we got shut down. And we've got some lovely guests here, as well as I know people are watching the recording from our first Live at Lunch, February the 1st. The year is already flying, isn't it?
Really is.
Yeah. So I have with me Simone, who's a naturopath and a science teacher and just loves, learning about new things.
Yeah.
And I've called you here an early adopter because you love to try new things out. And there's so many people in our community that are early adopters, but not many who will take on the challenge of new things. And Simone's certainly one of those. And so she's dived headfirst into cryptocurrency. You would have heard it more in the media as Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't heard of cryptocurrency till I was talking to Simone, who was getting so excited.
Yeah, that's right.
Spending a lot of her holiday at the beach delving into cryptocurrency. So I invited her along because I just was fascinated by how much I learned from Simone that I thought other people would like to share as well. So feel free to ask questions as we go, and but there will certainly be question time at the end. So either way, you can hold off. So I'm just going to hand over to Simone to talk about cryptocurrencies.
Okay, well, yes, so my background in cryptocurrencies is very minimal, really. Like, I heard about it in 2010 from a friend who said, buy some. And of course, to this day, I regret not listening because I would have been very wealthy. And then I left it, and then sort of started really researching around October, but I didn't invest anything, just did lots of reading and study. And then regretfully left it for too long and sort of really chucked a whole heap of money in around mid-December and have been on this massive roller coaster ever since. Now I just press down, don't I?
Yes.
Okay, so what is this all about? That's the real question, because it's all through the media. Nobody quite understands exactly what it is unless you maybe a computer programmer into these specific algorithms. And so what I'm trying to understand for myself, as well as trying to educate other people as I go along, is trying to understand what this whole notion of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin being one of those, and the blockchain is, and will it have any impact on our lives, or is it just some sort of Ponzi scheme, like a lot of people call it? And how
Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, Ponzi scheme is basically some guy called Ponzi back in the day. You know, it's basically pyramid.
Yeah.
Pyramid. Is it a pyramid scheme?
Yeah.
And who's in charge and what's happening? And can you buy some easily, and will it be safe when you buy it? So basically, those are the questions I'm trying to address in this talk. Okay. And even, I'd like to say, when asking the question what Bitcoin is, it's hugely complicated. So it's a distributed ledger which updates automatically in real time using a consensus algorithm. Okay, so what does that even mean, you know, when you're just looking up the actual definition of it? So a distributed ledger basically means that, let's say I decide to send Vivian some money. Normally it'd go through the banking system, and so the bank's computer would verify that, and then Vivian's bank would verify that she got it, and that's the way that it has been working. Or I just make an agreement to Vivian, and then I can back out on that. And not give her the money, and then there's no proof that I ever said that. And so the whole idea there is to, phone's ringing, technology getting in the way. So the whole idea basically is to create a safer financial transaction system, and distributed means that more than one person verifies that it has happened. So in that way, even though people are concerned about money laundering and things like that with Bitcoin, it's actually a safer way of monitoring transactions that have occurred between two people. And so it's automatic, which means that, yes, as soon as it happens, then it's sent straight to another computer that's verified that, yes, Simone is intending to send Vivian money. And then someone in Afghanistan says, yes, Vivian is getting this money from Simone, and it goes to maybe 6 to 40 different computers. And so that's where it's supposedly safer, because not only that, it is a consensus algorithm. So that doesn't mean that you know everything about Vivian and Simone. It's just a piece of data that is verified by another computer. And so it's just a whole heap of numbers that cannot be changed or altered. They're just a particular algorithm which says that Simone sent $100 worth of Bitcoin, in this case, to Vivian. So even that little bit is difficult to explain, but essentially it's a new way of sending information from one person to another. And what is interesting about it is that it cannot really be hacked, because even if a hacker gets into the computer in Afghanistan, they need to get into all the other computers around the world in order to alter it. So we'll get into hacking a little bit further along. So it's all about cryptography, and that in itself is another huge rabbit hole to fall down. Like, I'm not going there because I'm not that geeky. I don't, basically for me, it's just like a secret code, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But if you're somebody who is interested in programming and looking at mathematical algorithms, that might be something that you're trying to go down. But basically, all you need to know is that it's a financial system that needs to be verified by multiple users, and anyone can see it. So as soon as I've sent something, it's visible on the blockchain to confirm that's been done. And so in real world situations, you can see straight away that somebody has sent you something straight away, instead of waiting 3 or 4 days till something arrives, or a week for a check. So the benefit in the financial system is that it's a lot faster. And another thing is that it can't be tampered with. Nobody can change it. It'll just get rejected, and so the money will end up back in your account.
So it does end up being in your bank account?
Well, it's a virtual bank account.
Oh,
so
okay.
that's another thing entirely.
Okay. So it's a thing that's about your Bitcoin, and whether your Bitcoin, no, not your Bitcoin, your cryptocurrency is going up and down.
Yes. Yeah? Oh, that's another rabbit hole. But basically, from this slide, what I'd like you to get is that it's a financial transaction or information that is sent via multiple people, multiple computers, that verify that yes, it occurred, and it happens straight away, and it's actually a lot safer than sending something through a main server, which is controlled by one corporate entity. Okay, so that's basically that in a nutshell. And as you can see, it's already complicated. Okay, so this is where I was talking about. It's heavily encrypted hash codes across a peer-to-peer network. What that means is that computers all around the world, the ones that are called miners, they call themselves miners, all that the miners are doing is verifying that a transaction has occurred. And that's the peer-to-peer network. So they've all got the same program running on their computers that verify these transactions. So you can set up a computer for yourself that mines Bitcoin. It'll just recognize that a transaction has occurred and say, yes, it has, and send it on. So basically that's what and the Bitcoin network, you get a little bit of Bitcoin from that. And it's totally not financially viable, by the way, because there's so many computers doing it, and it's expensive, and it's
not financially
slow.
viable to be a miner.
No, really. Not for Bitcoin. There are other coins that you can mine. And once again, that's another whole tunnel to go down, where you can set up these fabulous computers that basically passively make you an income. And I've talked to a lot of people that do it, but they don't seem to be earning a beautiful amount of money. You know, it's all like $20 a week or something like that. It's really, really not huge unless you've got the computer power. And then the main issue is that Australian electricity prices are very high. So there's nothing. So most places, most really big mining companies are either in China, and they're feeding off the surplus electricity from nuclear or coal power plants, or they're in Greenland, in Iceland, because they're hydrothermal power. So it's quite power heavy, Bitcoin itself, and then these new cryptocurrencies, so cousins of Bitcoin, they're quite a bit lighter in their consumption. So a lot of the contention around Bitcoin comes from the environmental impact of doing these verifications, basically. That's as much as I understand it. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Yes. So the next thing that you need to think about are these digital wallets. Okay. So a digital wallet is basically a company that will hold your Bitcoin for you, or enable you to keep your Bitcoin offline. Okay, so that's the digital wallet, which is kind of like your bank account or purse. Okay, and so you will get a code like the one on the screen, or you can use, what's this thing called again?
A QR code.
QR code.
Quick response code.
Right. Or the QR code, which is the same as that gobbledygook on the screen there, and you copy and paste that, and that's how you will send and receive by having this code.
Okay.
And so you need to get a copy of your codes and put them, the private keys, like the digital wallet that you sign up for will give you a private key, which you need to copy out and put into a safe so that you've always got access to it, because the security aspect is another thing. Of keeping your private keys private is another whole ball game unto itself. So this is where I'm thinking it's stopping a lot of people buying it, because it's quite complicated, because people don't really want to take responsibility for their own finances. In their mind, they want to take responsibility for their own finances, but they're so used to having other people look after their finances that they're not ready to take on all the privacy and security themselves.
Right.
So for myself, I forget things and lose things all the time. So to have a little thing with millions of dollars on it in a safe somewhere in my room is kind of quite challenging to think of for myself, and that's something that you need to think about,
the security
in
from
terms
your
of
end.
and whether you keep it on an exchange and that sort of thing. So there's a huge amount of jargon that you need to learn if you're not going to do something as simple as, I'm just going to buy a bit of Bitcoin and I'm going to keep it in my digital wallet online. Okay, so that bit's easy. That's the easy bit. Buying your first bit of Bitcoin is easy, but the rest of it gets a little bit more challenging as you go along. Okay, so the history, I think, helps you to understand exactly what it's all about. So basically it was these cypherpunks, so you thinking geeky, potentially cool people, wanting a society that was not owned by big corporations, and everybody was getting quite angry at the Wall Street and the manipulation of everything and everyone, and how in third world people are being ripped off, whereas we're kind of living in this luxury, and you wonder how it is that you can buy a pen for 50 cents when really each part is worth more than 50 cents, and how it came into existence. So, and that's all through centralization and basically big corporations ripping off the little man, and at least 60% of the population living in poverty. And then through all this manipulation and this corruption came the global financial crisis, and this anonymous group of people or person called Satoshi Nakamoto decided to come up with a mathematical algorithm that was to change the whole financial system, to basically remove banks and other third parties like big corporations out of the equation and give everybody financial freedom. That was the beautiful altruistic view that started the whole thing, which I find quite interesting as a bit of a rebel myself. However, that's changing as we're noticing with all these manipulation by Goldman Sachs, for example, who released a thing saying Bitcoin bad, don't touch it, evil stuff, and then meanwhile have bought it up big. You know, there's a lot of corruption in that governments release statements saying that it's crap, and then wait for the price to drop, and then jump on in and buy
themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
And buy in.
And so the whole point was that mathematics is far more reliable than politics. Okay, so the whole idea was that you can't counterfeit a Bitcoin. There's no way to counterfeit it, because it's a mathematical code that says I am a Bitcoin or a percentage of a Bitcoin, and as soon as you try and change it, it'll fade away into nothingness. Whereas money is counterfeited. It's able to, or some fascist dictator can decide, I'm going to print out heaps of it so that I've got lots of money, which doesn't work because that devalues the whole currency. So Yeah, so I like this line that it's the largest socio-economic experiment that the world has ever seen. Like, it really is an amazing thing, and it's an amazing time to be alive and watch it happening and coming into the mainstream media. And if you get really into it, then you'll read the news from all different countries. Russia and China are particularly interesting, or Venezuela is super into it. They want to make their own cryptocurrency because their currency is stuffed, basically. I just find the whole thing fascinating. I barely read any normal news anymore. I just read Bitcoin news because that shows a lot about viewpoints of society and where different politicians are headed. And so the more constrictive a society is, the more likely it is to ban Bitcoin transactions, because people are afraid of losing that centralization and losing that power. The government wants to know where you spend your money and wants to be able to track it at all times.
But you're saying that our government is investing in cryptocurrency.
Yes, well, our government bought up some, like last month or something, they bought millions of dollars of Bitcoin. They're probably a bit sad right now because it's kind of halved in price since then. But anyway, whatever. You just have to, it's a real social experiment. So I would say if you're wanting to invest in Bitcoin, you need to invest in a social experiment rather than a get rich quick thing. Like, it's really about stuff the banks and all of that stuff. We've had enough of these rip-offs and of the corruption in the banking system, and we want to try something new. And it may become corrupt also. Of course, human nature is to corrupt many things. But I just, for myself, think it's about time that we gave everyone a little bit of a kick in the bum, you know? So, yes, so as you can see, it is a very complex thing. It's largely governed by politics. You know, yesterday, Korea announced that they're going to keep going and you're allowed to buy cryptocurrency, but the price of it dropped exponentially because everyone was afraid that South Korea would ban it. And so that had a huge effect on the market. And now they're saying it should recover because even though it's going to be a little bit more regulated now, it'll be adopted. And it is being adopted. If you look at Brisbane, wants to be the first crypto city where you can buy everything in crypto.
So it's like an alternative currency when it comes down to the real situation. Like, I saw on TV that a coffee shop was going to be selling their coffee via cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And if Brisbane's doing it, so it's about having an alternative, working on an alternative currency, isn't it?
Yes, it is definitely about that, and it's about globalizing. So I guess for myself, I've never been in the position where I've been overseas and had no money because I had everything stolen and needed money really quickly, or had to send money to my family overseas. But there's a lot of people that have to do that on a regular basis, send money to their family overseas, or they're stuck. And the only way to get it really quickly is through Western Union. So you go to the post office and then you might get the money tomorrow. So the whole idea is with Bitcoin that you should be able to, or a similar currency, you should be able to just click your fingers basically and get that money to your family in need, or get that money to yourself if you're in need, without having to worry too much about that time. So that is definitely of great benefit. And however, that's where my next issue comes up, is that it's about scalability. So Bitcoin is a very slow, old thing. So if you think of it like an old word processor or something, you know, and how long it took to load up a website or something back in the good old days of the modem. Even now, it's very slow. So Visa, yes, has 25,000 transactions per second. So Visa is a company. It has a central database. It has big computers. It's owned by, who knows who it's owned by, but it's owned by several fat cats, no doubt, and they own all the computers and so on. And Western Union is a bit slower, only 750 transactions per second, whereas Bitcoin only has 7 transactions per second. So it's very slow, and I hear all the time on the pages that I subscribe to, people are whinging that their Bitcoin hasn't shown up for a couple of days. And that's why based on this Bitcoin mathematical algorithm, other currencies have been created, like Litecoin, for example, because all the mathematics and all of the computer stuff. See, I've got my linguistics are failing me here. Is free. Anybody can use the algorithm to create Bitcoin. Basically, they can use it for themselves. But some other clever people have modified it to make it faster. So you might have heard of a cryptocurrency called Ripple, which is owned by banks that send money between South Korea and Japan, basically, is where Ripple came about, because they realized this blockchain technology and having things verified quickly through numerous computers in real time was a much more efficient and cheaper way of sending finances across between banks. Mm-hmm. So the banks actually made up their own one, which of course has created a rift in the community, because then people are going, hey, that's this blockchain stuff, but the whole reason we're in Bitcoin is because we want to get away from the banks. So what's the
banks
point?
Are in it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all interesting around that. And yeah, so at the moment it is not regulated, and that is particularly why people like to start off with. They like the fact that it's not very regulated, that you could send your money wherever you wanted and buy whatever you like. And so there's a lot of trust involved, and there are privacy issues in that, yeah, people can see that something was sent here or there on one level, and on another level you can't actually see who it was that sent it. So therefore it's handy if you want to buy drugs. Obviously it's just an encrypted thing.
Potentially an opening for black market.
Oh, there's huge,
black market works its way around.
Well, the black market was designed by the financial system. Yeah. So yeah, and so then obviously this whole idea that Bitcoin itself was designed from its foundation to destroy the banking system is interesting in itself. You know, how are the banks going to react to this? Are they just going to find it all so that the banks are in control of it, or are they going to try and ban it? You know, there's a big thing in Australia at the moment that the ATO doesn't know how to deal with it, because it's a new thing. And then of course I was having a good giggle to myself that the banks are helping. Isn't that nice? The banks are helping them to regulate it and try and get on top of this Bitcoin problem. Very nice of them to do that. Okay, so then this whole money laundering thing comes up in the media all the time. But I had another giggle, because what money laundering means is the concealment of the origins of illegally obtained money. Okay, so it's actually money laundering is only really a money thing, and usually involves foreign banks or illegitimate businesses. So we all know that big businesses are pretty clever at avoiding paying tax, and they just put their money into offshore accounts and that sort of thing. Mm. And then there was all this conspiracy around the Silk Road. I didn't put the date. Anyway, the Silk Road was a company that basically sold anything online through the deep web. So it's not available for common viewing, but if you can get into the deep web using a few different extra shielding methods, then you could have bought anything. And the way that you could buy anything, like a nice hitman for your mother-in-law or whatever, was to use Bitcoin. You could use Bitcoin for that, but I mean, obviously, you can take a suitcase full of money and give it to said hitman. But it was just very convenient for the hitman to just say, "Hey, I'm available for this fee," and so on. So anyway, then the guy who got done for that was this Ross William Albrecht, who just had a little card game website which he changed into this illegitimate business thing. And anyway, I found it quite interesting how he was tried in New York, where Bitcoin was launching, even though he was in New Orleans or something. So the government really tried to make Bitcoin look like it's an evil thing that's used for bad things. But anyway, we all know money gets used for all sorts of bad things, but they really tried very hard for the general public to go, Bitcoin bad, drugs, Bitcoin bad, drugs.
Right. To make a connection.
A connection. Mm. However, it sort of backfired on them, because they seized a huge amount of Bitcoin and sold it off as an asset. So therefore, it legitimized it as an asset. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, it really took off once this happened, because they made a weird connection there. And then these Winklevoss twins who were in Facebook, they have now made their billions and billions because they jumped on it quite early. And what's interesting about them is that they thought rightio, we don't like the regulation aspect. However, it is going to happen. So rather than just pretending that it's not going to happen, we're going to work with the government to try and regulate this Bitcoin industry. So
which then sort of comes back to the opposite of why it started, doesn't it? That regulation indeed. But I suppose we all seek regulation in terms of security.
That's
in
right.
Some way.
Yeah, so it's sort of like, do you want complete freedom and freedom from judgment or whatever, and you want to be able to spend your money on whatever without anything, or do you want to keep it safe? It's kind of not possible to have it really safe and really regulated and make sure that everybody who sends you Bitcoin is held accountable to make sure that you get it, or you get a refund if there's some mess up or whatever. Yeah, so it's a really complicated and interesting phenomenon in that way. So, I mean, from a visualization perspective, I just wanted to talk a little bit about centralization. So if you look at that little star thing here, so have a look at that little star thing there. So if you imagine that little blob in the middle is the Westpac Bank, and so each of the computers are then, you know, everything has to go through that big central server. Everything has to go through there, and that's centralization for you. And that's where you can, if you're a hacker, all you need to do is go into that big blob there, and then you get it all. You get it all. And so that is where the problem lies. Whereas on the next bit, you see this is decentralization. So you have to go through a number of different nodes in order to get that same amount of information. However, what's happening is that people are storing their money on exchanges, which deal. So basically, if Viv and I want to open an exchange, we buy millions and millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin or whatever, and then sell it to people in a bank-like system. And so what's happening is when you hear about hacking, it's not the blockchain, it's actually that central exchange.
Where people are coming back to.
Yes, where people are coming back to, and they're storing their money there on that central computer rather than pulling it off and putting it into their little safe. So
the little Bitcoin wallet. No, what was it called?
Yeah, the digital wallet. Digital wallet. So, so that's where the legislation is now coming in. That what responsibility do these exchanges have? You know, if they get hacked and all of your Bitcoin gets stolen, at the moment there's nothing you can do. It's like, too bad, so sad. Have a lovely life, you know, and that exchange goes bankrupt, and that was the end of it. But so they want, of course, people don't like that. They've put all their money into Bitcoin and then suddenly it's gone. So that's where, as a Bitcoin owner, you need to take some responsibility and think, okay, so what am I going to do to avoid that? And until the exchanges get good enough at stopping the hackers from robbing all their stuff. And that's where I recommend diversifying, because, for example, in Japan there was a big hacking and they only stole one coin called NEM, but they stole $450 million worth of it. But then if you have NEM and Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these other ones, then you're probably a lot safer, because they can only steal one type of currency at a time, it seems. Okay. So basically, Bitcoin is seen as like a digital gold. And what that means is that it's only a thing of value. It's not actually necessarily good at anything anymore, you know, whereas a lot of these new currencies, they want to get into all these markets. They want to basically keep all the records of anything. So a good example was one little coin that's coming out that wants to keep records of every car that was ever manufactured and every single mechanical repair that it's ever had. So let's say Viv bought my car, and she'd be able to click into this particular website, which would then show her the entire history of the car, which cannot be modified or corrupted or altered, which is why the blockchain is so valuable. So that then when you're buying a car, you know exactly what's happened to it, because every mechanic has put it into this particular database. So
that this is one example.
That's one example of one company doing one little thing. So there's other ones that are trying to get all the charity organisations together so that there's a bit more oversight, because there's a lot of money laundering that goes on with charities, or there's ones that want to get all the medical records online. And then, of course, China wants to monitor every single thing that all its citizens are doing at any time. So there's great big computer companies that are wanting to get all the fingerprint scans and everything that you've ever done basically onto one central database. That's a block that's scattered throughout the globe, so that everything that you've ever done is accessible, basically, which I find to be a bit scary, you know, that we're looking at, okay, so with this blockchain technology, does it mean one world government where every single move that we make is kind of verified?
Sounds a bit like that.
I think it sort of is heading that way. And then but on the other hand, you can see some good things coming up, like there's companies on the blockchain that are helping people get an identity faster. So all these people who aren't able to access anything except for in their immediate environment are able to suddenly access the internet and purchase things because you don't need a bank account. And this is particularly good with helping refugees. You just need to sign up with this company who will help you. So if some Syrian refugee walked in here and I decide to get him to mow my lawn, I could pay her in Bitcoin or similar currency straight away, so that they'd be able to start functioning. Whereas if you are a refugee, normally it takes weeks and months for you to have a verified identity and so on and so on.
So I've got a question. So if you've got Bitcoin currency, can you then somehow exchange that for money to buy your lunch?
Yes.
So that
yeah, you can. Well,
which would be, you know, so much having lots of Bitcoin in a community where no one's, you know, you might be able to get to that one coffee shop that's selling coffee true. In Bitcoin.
Yeah, I haven't actually thought about that, but it seems like most of these companies are linked with Visa, like that Visa and MasterCard are joining forces. So I imagine that you must be able to use an ATM that it shows how much Bitcoin you have and transfers it for a fee. That's another thing. The fees are pretty phenomenal at the moment. That's another good thing about regulation, is that you can say, no, you're not allowed to charge $150 or whatever. You have to have a fee. Like all ATMs have a particular fee that is associated. That's mainstream and so
it's complex.
It's very complex, and this is what's holding it all back. And until there's companies that make it easier, so that you can just walk in and say, hey, I want to buy some Bitcoin, and somebody says, here you go, yep, no worries, there you go, you know, then I think most people feel a bit overwhelmed.
And it's like anything that's new, there's an evolution. I mean, there would have been an evolution in terms of the banking system initially too, and the trust in putting your money in the bank. I mean, you see runs on the bank too at times.
Oh, that's true. Well, if you think about
history,
when it just died and all your money was gone and there was nothing you could do.
They just lock the doors and you can't get it out. And it happens.
It does. Money is just one of those weird and wonderful things. But so it's not just money. So the cryptocurrency name is actually bad, really, because it's not just a currency, it's actually storage of information, because we're just transferring so much information to each other all the time. Like there's constant information being sent through the internet. So really the blockchain is just an internet upgrade. Okay, so the digital currency is only one aspect.
So you've got an image here that shows a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's all those sorts of things, and we're only talking about e-commerce really at the moment.
Yeah, or global payments really, and remittances when you send money from one place to another.
Here. Yeah. Whereas there's a whole lot of which you just touched on with the record keeping and security.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
I know. Okay. So it's massive, and so you can see from this little ecosystem that there's so many different companies that do so much. So you've got your exchanges up the top there. It's not the clearest image, I apologize, but Poloniex is one that's really popular in America, and Gemini is the one owned by those twins. Whereas here in Australia, a lot of people use CoinSpot because it's pretty easy to use, and you just have to. I don't think CoinSpot's actually on this one, but it's an exchange that you can use. It's got relatively high fees, but you can just basically transfer. Once they've verified you, which takes a few weeks, then you can buy a multiple of currencies. So you could start off by just buying some Bitcoin, and then a little bit of Ethereum, which is a new version of Bitcoin, which I personally highly recommend. It's very versatile. Like it's a computer program that other computer programs are built on. So a lot of people love Ethereum. It's only worth 1/10 of the price because there's 10 times as many available. So coin market caps and how many are available, and all of that is another level of it. So I think, for somebody wanting to invest in Bitcoin, you need to decide for yourself, where are you wanting to head with it? Do you just want to hold some Bitcoin and see what happens? Some people say it's going to be worth millions. Other people say it's going to be worth nothing. Where do you want to just do it out of a sense of curiosity and in the hope that in a few years you might make some good money? Or do you want to go down this giant rabbit hole and learn about these different currencies? Because not only is there all the things that are already in existence, as you can see here, this is just a tiny little bit of all the things that are available. There's always new companies coming out. And so a lot of people say nowadays that the market's overbought. There's been a lot of media push. So all these things, all these systems that are already available are actually not worth what you pay for them at the moment because of all the media hype. So a lot of people are now investing in the new companies, new platforms and new exchanges that are opening in the hope that they'll make lots of money that way. Or you can, on these exchanges, you can trade, it's all very similar to the stock exchange. Yeah, so it's a massive thing. It's not just a little thing, and the media makes it out to be Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's only basically the grandfather of the whole system.
One of these many things that's on this screen is Bitcoin. Yeah. Except was the biggest at the start.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's basically like people say, is it actually of any value? And it's not actually tangible and real and so on. But then you think about gold. Like gold is just this yellow lump of stuff, and it's a little bit useful, sure, but there's other things that are useful. But people love it, and it's seen as, what you're basing everything on is gold. But really, it's all in our mind as a society that this yellow rock is worth something. So for me, the idea that it's not real, what is real these days, considering the majority of our money is actually in the stock exchange, like 1/4 of money is on the stock exchange, and then the value of gold is actually far less than all the hedge funds.
Depending on which day it is. All right.
Anyway, any questions?
It's huge, isn't it? Questions. And we are over time, but, we're recording, so it's all cool. Have you got any questions for Simone? Or you totally, your brain's exploded?
I haven't got any questions. It's Fiona here. But I'd just like to say thank you for that summary, because I've heard bits of it before, but it's great to get just an overview all in one go of all the different components and the areas that you see as being of value, and linked to that, I guess, some of the reasons why it's likely to persist, although equally some reasons why big organisations might not be so keen on it. So thank you.
Oh, great. No worries, thank you.
Great, Fiona. And just to let you know that next week we are doing the social media for business, and I have Maddie Cook joining me from Maddie Cook Communications, and she's going to share a whole lot of current insights, really on current things with the cryptocurrency and then social media. So Maddie's looking at all the algorithms. So we've got that same word appearing again in terms of some of the key social media tools. So those algorithms change really quickly too. So it shows we're in a changing world. And so it's just, I think it's being aware. It doesn't mean you have to be all over it, but being aware and connecting in with those people who are more engaged and researched, as Simone has. I mean, she just blew my mind with the hours and time she's explored. And so Maddie, likewise, is looking a lot at social media. So join us next week and have a fantastic week. And by all means, just escape out of here and And know too that we actually have real live events too. So I'm organising one for Barradine, and we have a program. So if anyone's interested in that, check out vivianevans.com.au and check out for live events for our upcoming webinars. We'll be adding on to those and connecting with entrepreneurial and innovative women. And likewise, we're having a real event coming together with a variety of workshops and activities in Barradine in March. So if you'd like to get an update on that, Barradine's near Coonabarabran, so Warrumbungles, and there's some fantastic women coming from all over New South Wales initially, but anyone can come. So if you're interested and want updates on that, enter in this purple section on the page for some real stuff as well. Real in person, love the connections online, live, and then we can connect. We have, Fiona just asking questions from Tasmania, and here we are in New South Wales. It's a wonderful world we live in. So connect, create, and collaborate, and I'll see you online at some stage. Have a fantastic week.